So thank you all for joining us. My name is Lori Ramey. I'm the Executive Director of the Upper Delaware Council. And the reason that we're here today is actually Marvin Rappaport, who you'll hear from momentarily. Marvin served as Chief of Staff to U.S. Representative Matt McHugh from 1975 to 1979, during the time that the 18-year member of Congress from New York State authored the very carefully crafted federal legislation to designate the Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River for permanent protection. And Marvin had recently conducted an oral history interview with the former congressman to make sure that the history of why this was done and the process that it took to succeed in the legislation passing was captured. The UDC was delighted to feature this oral history interview at our April 3rd meeting. And at that time, Marvin mentioned to us that the congressman never really got his public due for the accomplishment of this legislation. There were no permanent monuments, nothing out there particularly that pertained to this significant role that he played in our local history. So we took the ball that he suggested and ran with it and opted to do an honorary plaque, which is what brings us here today, so we can rectify that oversight. The UDC board of 15 voting delegates that represent the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the state of New York, and 13 of our local governments endorsed this concept unanimously. Then we went to the Tustin Town Board that approved this ideal publicly accessible riverside location as perfect for such a plaque. And due to our nonprofit organization's financial crisis, which has a deficit currently, we had to do fundraising in order to subsidize this project. That was a critical component. Fortunately, we have a steadfast champion in Nadia Reich, who is the chairperson of the Sullivan County Legislature and also the UDC's delegate to the town of Lumberland. We also received a very gracious private donation from Narrowsburg resident Devin Corrigan, who we will recognize as well. And that contribution was facilitated by UDC Town of Tustin alternate Kathleen Breen, who is also here with us. The plaque and the contributors' recognition plate, which we're about to unveil, were research designed with our inscriptions and meticulously overseen by Doreen Warner, who is the creative director for W Design based in Berryville. She's here this afternoon. Finding the materials that would be appropriate for outdoor usage and working with the vendors on our behalf and tracking the shipping and panic ordering a new nameplate when the first one got lost hopelessly in the mail and could not be found. On the town level, we worked with Supervisor Ben Johnson to arrange the approvals we needed to use this site, and our liaisons for the selection of this specific location for the plaque were Deputy Supervisor Jane Luxinger and community and the councilperson Cass Collins. So thank you very much for working with us on this. They in turn reached out to the very talented general contractor who redesigned this Big Eddy observation deck. That is Tom Kawachi from Damascus, and does a lot of work here in the town of Tustin as well to do the installation, which, as you know from the past couple of days of rain, he and his crew were out here screwing things in as the rain fell on them. They had no problem. They immediately agreed to help us out with this and would not take any payment from the town of Tustin or the UDC, which is very gracious and an example of Tom's community spirit, which he always shows. So we thank Tom and his crew for that. I would also like to acknowledge that we have Jasmine here from the National Park Service, who is their visual information specialist for a couple more days. Unfortunately, she's moving on to a position at Grand Tetons National Park, but in the meantime, she volunteered to record this, so we have it for history's sake and also to share with the congressman so he can see this. And at this point, thank you, Jasmine, we are now going to show you what lurks under this cover. So I would ask Marvin to do the honors and unveil the plaque, and then he will share his remarks. Ta-da! And at this time, I will turn it over to Marvin to share his thoughts.
Wow. First, I am honored and privileged to be here today. By way of background, I grew up in the other part of Sullivan County. The Borscht Belt is where I came from. My grandparents had a hotel over in Monticello. And I must admit, as a child, I had no concept of what was yonder. What was on the western side, till my dad, when I was about 10 years old, took me to Fort Delaware. And we looked at the river and I got an idea. So that's what happened. I graduated from the Monticello schools. I was going to practice law in Monticello. And a young man called me one day in 1974 and said, I'm running for Congress and I'd like you to help me. And that was McHugh. I said, Mr. McHugh, we haven't had a Democrat in parts of this district in decades. Why are you going to get elected? He said one word, Watergate. And sure enough, out of 9 candidates, he won the primary, and then he won the election. He asked me first to be the district representative, serving Sullivan, Ulster, and Delaware counties, half the district. And I covered those towns and communities, and Nadia, you know about serving communities, and got a good first-hand feel for it. And one of the first visits that Matt did when he came to this part of the district was right here in Narrowsburg. I can remember coming down. I was there an auto dealer still at the time by the light. And we went in and we walked around and we introduced ourselves. And as we learned more about Narrowsburg and Tustin and the river, Matt had the idea that it would be important to protect the river going forward. So what he did was he asked me to work with the National Park Service, your colleagues in Washington, who were very helpful in putting together a bill, but he insisted on certain things in the bill that made it unique. He said we have to write a bill that forces whoever's going to make rules and regulations on the river to work with the local communities on both sides of the river. In some areas, the Park Service had gone in and changed certain things, and people were very unhappy. So we wrote a bill, and I'll jump ahead. The bill was attached to a larger piece of legislation, which had many rivers included, most of them in one paragraph. Ours was 5 pages, because Mr. McHugh wanted to make sure that no more than 450 acres. Now, it's 70 some odd miles from Hancock to Port Jervis. He was limited in terms of the number of acreage to ensure fishing and hunting would not be restricted. It's just an example. And there was a number of things that we put into the legislation. I must admit, we had meetings along the corridor, and there was some skepticism. I use the word advisedly on the part of our constituents as to how this was going to work. But for those of you who know Mr. McHugh, his personality is such that he's very calming, and he's very careful, and he's able to explain in a very simple way what ideas he had about protecting the river. And while I don't know that we assuaged everybody, when the meetings were over, people came up and shook his hand and said, thank you. Let's hope you can implement what you have in your mind in terms of the legislation. Now, one of the other things it called for was an advisory council, thus the UDC. It's a creature of the federal legislation, and I'm delighted that, I should say it, 50 years later, I'm standing here and looking at the beautiful river that we all envision. And it's in large measure due to the UDC and to each of the communities and the representatives who've helped over the years. One of the other things that was very interesting, Matt said, we got to get some co-sponsors on the Senate side. He said, let's go see Senator Moynihan. So we went over and we had an appointment with Senator Moynihan. How many of you know that Senator Moynihan had a house in Delaware County in Pinder's Corner on the East Branch of the Delaware? He started telling us the history of the Delaware from the colonial days forward. He knew everything about it and was very pleased to be able to co-sponsor it. So it made it possible for us to do that. Here we are 50 years later, And I'm glad we have an opportunity to recognize Matt McHugh's contribution to this community and to the upper Delaware River from, as I said, Hancock to Port Jervis. Matt couldn't make it today, but he sends his regards and asked me to read a note that he wrote to Lori, which I think sums up how he feels about this legislation and about the honor of being recognized in this way. So let me read that for you. Dear Lori, I'm very grateful to you and the council, among others, for the plaque you placed in Narrowsburg to memorialize my sponsorship of the Upper Delaware River legislation. Preserving the pristine beauty of this extraordinary natural resource has been a cooperative effort, and I am proud of all who have been part of it. From the outside, my bill was blessed with invaluable support. For example, drafting the legislation was a team effort. Professional staff from federal and state agencies and from the relevant House subcommittee made important contributions. Critical support was provided by the chairman of that subcommittee and from members of Congress from New York and Pennsylvania, including our neighbors Ben Gilman and Joe McDade, both of blessed memory. My own chief of staff, Marvin Rappaport, a native of Sullivan County, was invaluable throughout the process. Thank you, Matt. However, the ultimate success in protecting the river and its surrounding communities depended upon effective implementation of the law after its passage. Our legislation was precedent-setting in requiring the National Park Service to cooperate closely with state and local interests. Prior to our bill, the Park Service had exclusive authority for managing protected river corridors, an arrangement strongly opposed by many of our constituents. Today, almost 50 years after passage of the legislation, we can truly celebrate the success of our precedent-setting cooperative effort. The special qualities of our Upper Delaware River corridor have been protected and will continue to be protected because of the close cooperation of the National Park Service with our local and regional interests in implementing our legislation. I'm hopeful that the success of our joint effort will be a template for national legislation going forward. I'm gratified by the opportunity I had to initiate our legislation, and certainly by the plaque you've prepared to recognize my role. But I'm particularly grateful for the commitment so many others have made to our cooperative effort. Hopefully you and they can be appropriately recognized at the ceremony in Narrowsburg. Unfortunately, my travel is limited these days, and I'll be unable to get there personally, but Marvin has graciously agreed to represent me. Thank you again for recognizing my contributions. It means a great deal to me and to my family. Signed, Matt.
At this time, we have a few speakers that would like to make some remarks. First, I will call upon Tom Kearns, who is the Natural and Cultural Resources Program Manager for the National Park Service, Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River. I almost did it all in one breath, but I usually do.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Just a few brief remarks. Some of them were already touched on, but I'll go anyway. So the National Park Service really appreciates the opportunity to participate in today's ceremony, and joining others in honoring and thanking Congressman McHugh for his vision and dedication. The Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River was designated as part of the National Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, National Wild and Scenic River System in 1978. Congressman McHugh played an integral role in securing this designation, helping to ensure that the river's outstanding natural, cultural, and recreational values will be protected for the benefit and enjoyment of current and future generations. The Upper Delaware is also distinguished by its collaboration management model. Unlike many units in the National Park Service, this river not primarily managed through federal land ownership. Instead, the National Park Service works in partnership with local communities, private landowners, the Upper Delaware Council, and state and federal agencies to steward these resources together. As demonstrated by the organizations and individuals gathered here today, the protection of this river is a shared responsibility and a shared passion. The National Park Service remains humbled to be part of this legacy. Thank you, Congressman McHugh, for your foresight and leadership in safeguarding this remarkable river. Thank you.
mention Nadia's role in the fundraising. She has access to discretionary contract funding through the Sullivan County Legislature and managed to secure $2,000 from her District 2 fund, which she wanted to go toward this plaque. And please say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And Marvin, every time I hear you, I learn something new. It's incredible. And speaking about Fort Delaware, my granddaughter from 4th grade is on a field trip at Fort Delaware now. So it is extremely important. This whole area is important. So again, good afternoon. Thank you, Congressman McHugh, for your vision for our area over 50 years ago. It's close to 50 years. You authorized a bill designating 73.4 miles of the river from Hancock to Sparrowbush as the Upper Delaware Scenic and Recreational River. Today, we have a thriving recreational area and benefit from its economy. The river is a gem. This legislation eventually included creating an organization which we know of today as the UDC that works cooperatively with 2 states, 5 counties, 15 towns and townships, and works along with the Park Service to ensure home rule and property rights of landowners within the corridor. This was unprecedented and still is unprecedented. Congressman McHugh was truly ahead of his time, a real visionary, and I appreciate all he has done over his 18 years of service. I also want to thank his prior Chief of Staff, Marvin Rappaport, a resident of Forestburg, my district, who presented a recorded oral history with the congressman at one of our UDC meetings. I certainly did not know of his contributions, but I'm grateful that I do now. Thanks to the other donors who made this plaque possible, Devin Corrigan, to the Tustin Town Board, Supervisor Johnson, for approving the location for the plaque and help with its installation. Thank you, Marvin, for helping to memorialize the Congressman's initiatives. Last but not least, thank you to the UDC members for getting the plaque produced. Lori, Kerry, and Stephanie, for all your hard work throughout the years. I don't think we give our staff at the UDC enough recognition, and we need to. So thank you. What a legacy created by Congressman McHugh, and this will continue in perpetuity. Also, additionally, I want to have a shout out to the federal government to increase its appropriations for the UDC so that we can continue, as well as to our state officials, New York and Pennsylvania. We need the money to allow the UDC to operate appropriately. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me.
As Nadia mentioned, Devin Corrigan matched the donation, and would you like to say a few words? We would welcome you to do so.
I can certainly say something quickly.
Please do.
First, I think they had the picture wrong on the plaque. I'm not sure. I think that was no. What a lot of people don't know is I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I now have a residence in New York. I grew up in Wayne County, and Kathleen Breen, I wouldn't even be here without her. So, you know, I lived in Los Angeles for almost 20 years, and I bought a substantial amount of land on the Delaware approximately 6 years ago. And it's very important to me, the legacy of what happens there. And it's RR zoned, meaning you can do a lot of stuff with it. So what we do with it is very, very important. And having my name next to this congressman on this plaque actually brings a tear to my eye. You know, I try to joke around and be funny, but the truth is it's very important. And I didn't even know what I was buying after I got here. And it's extremely important to me. And I'm very, very gracious and very happy to be part of the legacy of what's going on with this river. I don't know what else to say. I'm not a big public speaker. You know, good things are coming. Good things are coming.
We can certainly hope so.
Now I'd like to call up the Town of Tustin officials who are with us. We have Deputy Supervisor Jane Luxinger, Councilwoman Cass Collins, and Councilperson Kevin McDonough. If you'd like to come forward, and I know that Cass had or somebody had something to say? Yes.
Okay, I'll come
You're
up.
very shy.
Very shy. Politicians.
Right.
We'll let Cass go first.
Oh, really?
Well, I want to say something because I don't think it's been said many times, but I'm not sure how emphasized it is. That it's so important. You know, when we do anything in the town related to zoning or new buildings along the river, we go through the UDC. Everybody says, oh, you're mayor. But it's been so important and so rewarding to see how everything has been kept the way we all envisioned that we wanted. And it's all because of the legislation and the oversight. Thank you very much.
I'm going to speak for Ben Johnson, our town supervisor, ever so briefly, who had the honor of being a state trooper here in Narrowsburg in 1978. And at the dedication of the river, the scenic river, had to deal with demonstrators coming down Main Street yelling, protesting against it, saying no park, no plan, no way, repeated over and over and over. If you can imagine that happening right now, it wouldn't, and it won't in the future because of the efforts of Representative McHugh and people like Mark. So thanks very much for being here. We're very proud to have it here in Harrisburg.
Okay. All right. Silent partner. Before we head up the block to a luncheon that we have at the UDC office, which everyone is invited to attend, I did just want to open this up to anyone who has thoughts they would like to share about the congressman, perhaps, about anything that you like, because we will share this recording with the congressman, so he will see you. Would anybody like to say anything? Just come on up. Don't be shy.
Andy? Yeah. Tell us who you are.
So great to see all the supporters of this plaque and of the river. My name is Andy Boyer, and I'm the president of the Upper Delaware chapter of Trout Unlimited. And I'm here to add my voice in admiration for the vision that Matt McHugh had. I was just a youth back a few years ago, and it was amazing. And I'm here today to talk on behalf of the most numerous inhabitants of the river corridor. I'm here to talk to the inhabitants who do not have a voice. It's the fishies. I'm here to say that this river being protected and preserved in its pristine condition is so important for our environment, for what we have here. It's a blessing, and I thank Matt McHugh for what he did and what the Upper Delaware Council does today, and the Park Service and all the folks here to keep it that way. It's so important. On behalf of the fisheries, I say thank you. Thank you, Matt McHugh.
Anyone else? I
have one sentence.
Sure.
Permit me a privilege, one sentence. While I'm here, I want to say something that I've also participated in recently that relates to us standing here. I'm on the local history committee, the Crawford Library in Monticello, and we've done a number of interviews with local people on what it was like growing up, working, playing in and around our area. I recently met with your local history committee as part of ours and learned that there was no oral history of the town of Tustin and of Narrowsburg on record. So I volunteered to spend an hour with Art Hawker there. And as of today, what we're done, I believe on YouTube, we'll have that interview on the history of the town of Tustin and Narrowsburg as well. So it makes me proud to be able to contribute to keeping a record of this lovely hamlet on the river.
I did want to mention as well that I just met Colleen Cunningham, who said that she was an intern for Congressman McHugh in 1985. Is that correct? So thank you for joining us. She saw our announcement on Facebook. Social media works. And last call, if anybody would like to say anything, please do so.
Well, just because the fishies were called out, and we love the fishies, but every day I get to live next to an eagle's nest that's that's thriving and produces new eaglets every year, and I get to see river otters and a lot of deer. Could do without some of the deer, but anyway, we just have such an abundance of wildlife and natural beauty, and I thank you.
I have one other suggestion. Since we're all here and Congressman McHugh couldn't join us, will you join me in saying thank you to Congressman McHugh, who will be viewing this hopefully by tomorrow. Thank you, man.
And we would like to get a group photo with the plaque before, people can go ahead and head up to the office, but any of the speakers, if you could join me up here, and we will take that photo and then be on our way and have more conversation over lunch. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.